Thank you. My name is Elsie Laird. I was Elsie Dudman, and this is just a short talk about Royal Oak School and about the area of Royal Oak. I enjoy reading about pioneer families, watched U2 and saw Gary Cunningham tell his story, read the history story of the Heel family, read the book about the Van Trite family, and Ding Hafer let me read his book about the Mitchell family. And it just blows me away when I think about the first people to arrive on the Saanich Peninsula. How did they get here? How did they know what to buy? It was all trees and swamps and bushes and lakes. How did they know what to buy? This is amazing stories. The Dudman family came to Royal Oak area in about early 1942. Our dad was in the Navy, and he rented an old farmhouse that was on West Saanich Road, just down at the bottom of the hill, and the Colquitts Creek ran through our property. After getting settled down, it was time for Deanna, Bobby, and Elsie to go to school. Deanna went to the annex at the back of the schoolyard, and Bobby and Elsie were in the big building. All the little children had to walk up about 12 steps to get to their classroom. And they were so quiet during all that class time, I think they fell asleep. This was wartime, and Royal Oak School, being small and in the country, we would do different things than what the city schools would do. And I remember collecting silver paper. We would go out around the streets picking up silver paper from the old cigarette boxes. You know, across the street from the school was an empty field full of goats. And the seniors, which would be me, we would have to run across the street, get as much silver paper as we could before the goats ate it. And sometimes we would chase the goats off, and sometimes the goats would chase us off. But then we also collected string, and I wasn't quite sure what they did with the string, but we collected great balls of string and great balls of silver paper. And when we had it all together, then somebody would come from the War Department or wherever, and we would have a little ceremony of presenting this to the War Department. School sports were played by all the children. Girls and boys played soccer together. They played catch-up baseball together. We did not have the severe competition of today. We just played the game, or we didn't. Who cared? One game that all kids loved to play, and even the teachers would join in, and that was Ante-I Over. Anybody play Ante-I Over? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a great game. And the school principal office was jutting out from the back of the school building, so we could throw the ball over top of that. And that's how we played it. Let me see, who were the classmates? I can remember some of the classmates, but not all of them. There was Charlotte Horseland and her two brothers, and they lived on Glanford Avenue, and their old house is now the Peacock Pub on Glanford. There was Bert and Dick Fatt. Their parents had the chicken place down on Normandy. There was Roddy and Helen Turner, the sister and brother. Now Helen married Dougie Dye, and Dougie Dye came from Prospect Lake. There was Joe McIntyre from McIntyre and Harding Gravel Pit, and there was Robert Van Trite. He was a very nice boy. There was the Chew family. There was June, there was Nancy, there was Susie, there was Grace, and there might have been others, but I didn't know them. There was Lorraine and Eleanor Miles, and the Robbins. The family of the Robbins boys made the whole soccer team, and they were a credit to Victoria. Our one summer activity that the teens in the area liked the most was roller skating at the south end of Elk Lake. Now, there's a lot of people around here that have no idea there was a roller rink at the south end of Elk Lake. And that was our favorite thing. This was a concrete rink, and of course, if it rained, no roof, and if it rained, we couldn't go there. But so we made a point of not going in the rain and not falling on the concrete. And there was an article about the roller rink in the Times Colonist quite a few years ago, which I answered. And this is dated 1998. And this is regarding the Elk Lake roller rink called Happyland. We never called it anything. As young teenagers, we would hike to the rink on a Saturday night. It was wartime, so no one had a car, and maybe occasionally could get a pickup truck. The we of the rink were the Doneys, the Butlers, the Turner boys, the Bens, the Mitchells, the Youngs, the Woods, and anyone else who lived in the Saanich Peninsula during that time. Most of the time, they still live around here. The rink was closed about 1946. Great fun, no booze, no drugs, lots of yelling, lots of flirting, and lots of laughing. Yeah, sorry, you are too young to remember anything about that time, but there are still lots of people in Victoria who went to the Elk Lake roller rink. And just sign us, 2 seniors with happy memories. And it was signed Vida, Mitchell, and Elsie. About that time, I was out of Royal Oak School and off to Mount View High School for grade 9. For one school term, I had to ride my bicycle along Glanford Avenue, up and down those hills. Then we moved to Rudolph Road, off of Tanner Road. At that time, Rudolph was a cow trail, and even graveled, and not even graveled at one end, and only on the south side of Tanner Road. It didn't go through. There were 4 houses along that stretch. The furthest was our neighbor, Charlie Wooten. And I can always remember Charlie Wooten because he almost blew our house up. Dad wanted to get rid of some large tree stumps, so he went and asked Charlie about using dynamite. And Charlie said he would do it because he knew everything there was to know about dynamite. Anyhow, Charlie used too much of something or other, and the huge tree stumps went flying over top of our house. My brother Bob thought that was really great. Charlie also was going to teach Dad how to water witch. Because our wells would go dry in the heat of the summer, and Dad would take 2 or 3 water barrels down to the Cunningham garage and fill them with water. Us kids didn't know how much it cost, but us kids sure learned how to use a bucket of water wisely. After our move to Rudolph, as we transferred to schools, Deanna went to Keating's, Bob and Elsie went to Mount Newton. And this was no great change for me because students from Royal Oak, Prospect Lake, and the roller rink were in my class. It was at the roller rink that I met Vida Wood. She later married Morris Mitchell, and to this day, we're great friends. In the summer of 1946, on a Sunday morning, Vancouver Island had an earthquake. I was making the bed in our room when the bed traveled across the room. My dad was running to shut off the power to the house to prevent a fire, and I looked out the window where I could see the Malahat, and the Malahat moved. I grabbed my little sister by the arm and ran outside to the open field. And after the shaking stopped, Dad came over and pointed out where we were standing. We were standing on top of the well. Yeah. There have been so many changes in this area, some good and some not so good. We used to ride our bikes along the pipeline. It was a shortcut to Beaver Lake. It was just a trail with gravel and pipes, and that's why it was called Pipeline. Now it's a road, and it has houses on it. We couldn't believe that. When we were young, there was no Pat Bay Highway. There was no Broadmead. That was all Rithit's Bog. And us kids would go down there with wagons and get our Christmas trees, but nobody stopped us. On Quadra Street at Beckwith, this is a little out of the area, but at Quadra Street at Beckwith, there's a stone house. We were told that it was the home of Saanich Police Chief. To me, the most interesting thing was the big barn at the back. On the roof of the barn were the big letters spelling Duroid. The whole roof was made of Duroid. Why? Was it the first Duroid roof in Victoria? Or was it just a form of advertising? I never knew. But the roof, it was black. I think the roof was black with the green letters said Duroid. In 1948, Beaver Lake froze over. Don Laird, who I later married, Don Laird took me skating on the lake along with hundreds of other skaters. And I was terrified because I could hear it cracking underneath all the time, and I thought we were going to go through. But I always think of Royal Oak and the Saanich Peninsula as my home. As a very young child, we moved very often, about every 6 months. I went to every school in Saanich, and sometimes I went to them twice. So to be in the Royal Oak, Saanich Peninsula area, where I grew up in my teen years, I loved it. And I was always so happy, and this was my home territory. And I thank you. If they, sure. If they don't, they most likely can't think of anything to say because it was so long ago.
Why were you moving so often?
I don't know. My dad was in the permanent Navy. He was a career sailor, and he went to sea about every 6 months. And as soon as he left for sea, my mother moved. Yeah, she was most likely trying to lose us.
Did she move when you were at school?
No, she didn't. A couple of times I did have to go and stay with a friend or a neighbor, and I was so afraid that they were going to move in the middle of the night that I kept getting up and running home.
When you lived on the West Saanich, do you remember any of your neighbors?
The Pete family lived right next door to us. They had a daughter named Joan. And then one up from that were the Vais, Dr. Vi and Jimmy Vi. Yeah.
And across West Saanich? Across from West Saanich farm?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't remember it. I don't remember it.
You were on that side?
We were on that side. We were on the, if you're going down the hill, the left-hand side. It was a mink farm. One time I passed down the hill, it was a mink farm. Yeah, or chinchilla farm. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Did you know the Whiteheads?
Know the name, but I don't know them, no.
There was a top of it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know the name, but I was just so busy running up and down the hill.
Was there a store up at the corner at that time?
There on the corner of Wilkinson Road, yes, there was always something in that building. And it's still there. The same building is still there.
It was called Orchards.
Oh, it was a video store. I know it's been a lot of different things there, yeah. I used to pick berries at Moss's that lived down on Wilkinson Road. And, and I used to pick berries there and beans and apples and all kinds of things. And that was always my summer job.
So it's an open...
Wilkinson Road. You go down Wilkinson Road, it's halfway down on the left, on the right-hand side. We used to skate at Quick's Pond, and we used to skate at Panama Flats. Yeah, you know. Anyhow, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You know, the thing is, as you're thinking about this, and as, you know, you're thinking about all the stories you're going to say, or maybe you're talking to somebody and they'll think, oh, I remember that. Darn, why didn't I write that down? You know, many things will come to you all the time, you know, of different things that happened. And as I say, there was no Pat Bay Highway, so we can't talk about that one. And I think the Pat Bay Highway came into being when W.A.C. Bennett was putting the BC ferries in. It was a quick route to the ferries. That was why it was built. Yeah.
Well, how did your parents come to be in Royal Oak? How did they?
Well, there was only one parent. There was only one parent. My mother and dad were divorced. Yeah, when I was quite young, and I think my sister was 2.
Fairly rare then.
Yeah. So, you know, so there was only my dad, and my dad was in the Navy, and it was wartime, and he had to get compassionate leave because he had all these kids to look after. You know, so we came. He was always stationed. He was always stationed in Victoria. I mean, people say, well, how come your dad was always in Victoria? Why wasn't he over here or there where my dad was? And I said, he was never away from Victoria. He joined in Victoria, and he was always in Victoria. Well, my dad was born in England, and yeah, my dad was born in Winchester, and then their family came to Toronto, and my grandparents were living in Toronto. And that's why Dad came from overseas during the war, compassionate leave, and he came back to Victoria, rented this farm, and got his kids back together again, you know. So, and that's why I like being at Royal Oak and being in the Saanich Peninsula, and I now live in Sydney, and I'm quite happy out in Sydney. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, when the roller rink was there, of course, and we came from Royal Oak, there was no Pat Bay Highway, you know. So I mean, we just going along the East Saanich Road to get home, and we walked everywhere.
Yeah. You see how dark it would be.
Oh, yeah, but we were fearless. Oh yeah, we were absolutely fearless. I mean, we could do anything and go anywhere. Oh yeah, and then they'd all, you know, because there was nothing to impede us. There was no liquor, there was no booze, or there was no drugs, there was no other. We were just kids having a good time, you know, and nobody bothered us. Oh no, you don't really want to hear anything about Bob. My brother was pretty wild, you know, and everybody knew who Bob was, you know. And he was pretty wild, but he was a good kid, really. There wasn't any stories I could tell you about Bob, really, that I would know about, you know, because if he was getting into trouble, he wouldn't tell me. I was the middle child, you know, and so I had to yell a little bit louder to get heard, and you know, and fight a little bit stronger to get anything, because Bob was younger and Deanna was younger, and then I had two older sisters, and I had to fight all the time, you know. So well, thank you very much for letting me reminisce. And as I reminisce, I suddenly think, oh, darn, I forgot that. because, we skated on Beaver Lake, and Beaver Lake froze.
Skate from Beaver all the way around too.
Yeah, but I was so afraid, I kept thinking I was going to fall through because I could hear it crack all the
You
time.
said it was cracking, I remember skating on it.
I remember something about black skin.
But that's where the rowing club is now.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't even talk about it. It was a wonderful place.
I didn't go there, I didn't go to Black Swan. I went mainly around where the Toby Jug was,
Went to know Hamsterley Park.
Hamsterley Park, yeah.
Actually by the lake. It's called
Yeah.
by Mr. Pease.
Well, they had that place there, it was called the Toby Jug.
The Toby Jug.
Yeah.
By Mr. Pease.
Speaker.
Oh,
Really nice to
thank you. Thank you very much.
Really nice.
Talking about schooling during the war would be pretty interesting to those of us who
Really, that's all we did.
went to school.
Yeah, but, and picked up silver paper.
And what was the silver paper for?
I don't know. I mean, but these
But
were...
what did they use it for?
Yeah, but I didn't even know. I said to somebody, was it real silver? It was silver. Why didn't we sell it and get some money for it? And they said, no, I don't think it's real.
Very thin foil.
Very, it's in foil, yeah. And they came out of cigarette wrappers and they came out of gum wrappers and...
So there was a lot of littering went on.
Oh, yeah. But we ran through the fields and picked it all up.
So there was